All right then. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Corporation of Loyalist Township. This is our Committee of the Whole budget meeting, our second meeting on this Thursday, January the 28th. Right. As usual, we are in an electronic format these days, so I will note that if any member of council loses connection during the meeting, we will suspend for a few moments, wait for that member to reconnect. And if 5 minutes has passed and that member has not managed to reconnect, as long as we still have quorum, we will continue with the meeting. Sorry to note again, Councillor Porter is with us, but her camera is not working, so she will be with us by audio only. Welcome, Councillor Porter. And just to make sure we can hear you when you say yes or no, or as you vote.
Hello, everyone.
So again, we are called to order. We have an agenda before us. Is there anything to add to the agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the agenda for the evening. Councillor Tannen, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Right, any comment? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? Hearing none, we move into staff reports. We'll start with our CAO to address this next phase of budget presentations.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of housekeeping remarks before we begin. So tonight we will continue with our presentation, and it will be for the capital and utilities budget. Members feel free to ask questions throughout the presentations, as we did last evening that we met. And after those presentations, there will be lots of time for questions or comments in general nature of all of the presentations. Staff are present to attempt to answer your questions. And just a note, staff have been working very hard this week since we met last on Monday, just developing some scenarios. So at the end of the evening tonight, if we could, if 6% increase, council feels it's not comfortable with that, if you would give us a percentage, we are developing some scenarios of what projects can be delayed, what services we might be able to cut, things like that. So we're working hard on that, and we'll be meeting again tomorrow following council's direction this evening, so that we can be prepared for Monday, February 1st to meet with you again and present those options for you should you request them at the end of the night.
Thank you.
That's all my remarks. I believe Mr. Renier hosted on Monday, so he's got his slide presentation, and he'll be calling the staff forward as their portion of the budget is presented.
Thank you. Mr. Renier, are you ready?
I am. I shared my screen. Can everyone see it, hopefully?
I can.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So as Steve was saying, just getting back into this, tonight is going, sorry, hold on. Tonight we'll be looking at the capital and utility budgets. And so I'll call on Steve Dickey, the Township Treasurer, and he'll get us started.
Good evening, council, public, staff. I'm just going to do a quick overview of kind of where the capital budget, how it looks in terms of what's in the current plan. Just a note too, on tab 9, there is a detailed listing of all the projects, and kind of a summary listing. There's also a detailed page for each of the project explaining kind of what the project's for, how it will be funded, and just some more detail on it. So that's behind tab 9 in the binder. So this is a summary of general capital projects by department. So the departments will be speaking to this, specific key projects in their areas as the presentation unfolds tonight. So a total of about 12.8 million. And just wanted to note as well, in addition to this year's proposal, there is some carry forward projects from past years that are still in process. And between general and utilities, about 12 million still unspent from projects approved in the past budgets that we're still carrying forward or are in process. So how to fund these projects? So this is for the 12.8. This is illustrates how it's proposed to be funded in the plan that's before you. So we have expecting some grants and some using some reserve funds and federal gas tax and some other things as you notice there. Just also in there to get to fully funded at this stage, we have about $6 million of debt. Barring any other source of funding or barring reducing or cutting any projects, that'll be required at this point to be able to fully fund the 12.8. So just to give an idea of order of magnitude, that $6 million debt is about, again, depending on your assumptions used around how long the debt's for and what rate you use, roughly $330,000 a year. So to issue that debt, we'd have to add about $330,000 per year onto debt service, both principal and interest. So, so just to think ahead about the impacts of that debt in the future should it be issued. And also one other note too, there's from previously council approved funding plans, there is about 900,000 left. We've been able to get by without issuing any new debt for a couple of years and juggling things around and done pretty well. There's still about $900,000 left in that projects carried forward that still would need to use debt to fund it should all the work be done that's brought forward. So just not issued yet. This slide's on just some talking about. We wanted to put on council's radar the community hub and the potential financial commitment that is required or may be required. Right now, we'll see there's 2.5 million included in the current 2021 proposed capital plan for design work. And in the long-term plans, we do have an additional 32.5 million built in based on current estimates for construction for the kind of the first two phases of the construction. Just wanted to note, staff are currently updating, looking at plans and options. And some of this you'll note on page 43 of the binder, some kind of bit of discussion around that. And we'll be bringing back to council some more information. Before we spend the 2.5 this year, we're proposing, and there's a motion to that effect, we're proposing to bring more information, more updated information back to council to get further direction on that. So 43's got some, page 43's got some of that background information. And just to look at the 10-year capital plan, you'll note that this reflects the current budget plus the 10-year plan that's included in the binder. Further to the discussion around the community hub, you'll notice a couple of kind of jags in the graph, which would reflect those spending years towards that project. So you'll see a couple spikes there. In the blue, and the red down below just gives an idea of kind of what's still left to be funded of those expenditures. So those gaps would need to be funded by debt or by government grants or by partnerships or whatever fundraising, whatever sources that are built into that business plan to build the community hub. And just a reminder, very important to the municipality is kind of our asset management plan implementation and the timelines around that. These are legislated timelines. So council did approve the asset management roadmap last September. So that's very helpful tool to guide our work plans and our schedules. So periodically we will continue to bring information back to council. I think we're going forward, we will be required to do at least an annual update, and there are a lot of staff are working towards these different different aspects of the project and will be over the coming years. So again, they're very important, and we'll good reminder that this work is still ongoing and kind of is required both legislative as well as best practice and a way to keep our assets in good shape and be able to sustain them over the long haul. So, okay, I think that's it for overview. Yeah.
So we move to corporate services. Mr. Silver, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just a reminder to council that we will be having a separate committee of the whole meeting to discuss the hub and how it moves forward and that capital financing, which Mr. Dickey was just referring to. So we stated that on Monday, so I just wanted to remind the members that we'll be doing that separately.
Do we have a target date for that committee of the whole at this point?
Yes, we were looking at March, Your Worship.
Thank you. Mr. Renier,
Okay, yeah.
Clerk?
So moving on now, each director will speak to and highlight some of the key capital projects in each of their departments. I'm going to start with Ms. Chapman and Corporate Services.
Okay, good evening. For corporate services, we're put it into public services, corporate management, and information technology. Next page. So the key projects for 2021 is a records management software. It's coming from modernization grant funding. It's an electronic document and records management system, and it'll utilize our current Tom Rooms classification system. It's the bonus on this is it allows remote access, compliance with legislation. It's an easy environment for staff. It's scalable to allow the growth when needed, so throughout the organization. Minimizes our litigation risk and consistency with records. The benefits, of course, is it's a backup in case of disaster. Efficiencies in staff time looking for documents, digitization, frees up office space, again, compliant with government standards. Ease to distribute documents inside org and outside, and increased security on our system. That's estimated at $15,000 for the first phase of it. The corporate app is $15,000 as well. The idea, and that is from modernization grant money as well. It'll complement the township's new website, allowing for mobile citizens to access mobile township services, report concerns, hopefully engagement, to promote engagement. And then lastly is $70,000 for the PC laptop computer replacement, which is on a 5-year revolving, and it just keeps our equipment up to date. I think that may be it for my slides, unless there's questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Chapman? Doesn't look like it. Moving forward.
Perfect. Next up, we're going to have Chief Stevenson and Emergency Services.
There I am. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and member of council. Tonight, I would like to present the 2021 capital budget request from the Emergency Services. 2021 capital is outlined on tab 4, page 40 of your binder. There are 5 key projects as identified on the next slide, or this slide, sorry. We are requesting to tender for a life cycle replacement of a 1993 Volvo pumper. The expected delivery date of the new pumper would be July or August of 2022. The 1993 Volvo pumper, which will be 29 years old when we take it out of service, will hopefully be sold as surplus. There's also $35,000 for the replacement of the 2011 Chevrolet Impala that's currently used by our fire inspector. We have been working with staff regarding our climate action plan, and we're looking at replacing this unit with a more environmentally friendly, smaller vehicle that will hopefully reduce operating costs. $30,000 is for our life cycle replacement of bunker gear to allow us to continue with the program to replace 10 sets per year. We currently have 100 sets of bunker gear in service, and it has a 10-year lifespan. So this is very important, this project keep up to speed. So $30,000 to continue life cycle replacement of fire-related equipment. This is an annual ongoing project for fire hose, portable pumps, water supply equipment, nozzles, portable lighting units, general hand tools. This year it got used a lot for COVID replacements, but Phil's going to fix that up, I'm sure. We are estimating 8 new volunteer personnel this year if we can run a recruit program. The $25,000 is for bunker gear and equipment. A full set of firefighter equipment costs about $3,000 per firefighter. Due to issues we encountered in 2020, if we don't think we can complete a recruitment class, then this hiring will be deferred till next year. Not on this slide, but in the binder is also $32,000 to replace the 20 kilowatt generator that's currently the emergency power at the Bath Fire Station. This unit is the unit we received from the province through the County of Lennox and Addington in 1998 following the ice storm. The unit was manufactured in 1997, so it still runs good, but it's getting to the age that it is going to fail one of these days. So, and unless there's any questions, that's all we have from emergency services.
Councillor Gordon, go ahead. We can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
I've turned you on there now. Is there do you have a guesstimate, Chief, with regards to what the pumper truck would sell for?
I have no idea. The problem with pumper trucks is that in order to be UL certified as a first run truck, they have to be within 20 years. To be a second run truck, depending on the condition, they can go 25 to almost 30, which is when this one will come out of service. The trouble is when they get that age, they're not very easily used by someone. So council did approve one we shipped down to the Dominican a few years ago. We have another 1993 sitting here that's on gov deals that we are currently trying to get sold. So sometimes these trucks end up just being sold more for scrap than anything else. We do put minimum offers just because of the weight of them. So the one that's sitting in Bath right now that is surplus is it's worth about $12,000 scrap weight. So that's what we usually put the minimum offer on for if someone wanted to buy them. And as long as they meet the minimum offer, if not, we scrap them. So I'd rather see them go somewhere else and be used as a water truck, but sometimes that doesn't always work. So at this point in time, I don't know, but I would say somewhere around the $10,000 mark, we're usually pretty happy to get out of them. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the chief? Seeing none, I guess we can move on.
Okay. Moving on, we're moving on to economic growth and community development services, and Ms. Merritt will speak to that.
Director?
Thank you. So the engineering and environment division.
Director Merritt, if you can adjust your mic or something, we're having difficulty hearing you.
Okay. Is this better?
Not really.
No. Okay.
We can hear you, but just faintly.
Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. There must be something with my headphones. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So the engineering and environment division manages a number of capital projects for other divisions and departments. So next slide, please. So the general portion of the capital projects being proposed for 2021 adds up to 8.5 million for the general rate and 3.6 million for utility service area. So some of the key projects being proposed are for the community hub project. There was $206,000 budgeted in 2020 that will be carried forward with a request for an additional 2.5 million to complete the design of phase 1 or more, depending on council direction, as we mentioned earlier, when we go back to committee of the whole. And it's also for addressing the pool infrastructure needs. We're also taking advantage of economy of scales and proposing a budget of 1.8 million for proposed development partnerships. This is for upgrades to existing municipal infrastructure, which can be done in conjunction with development work. So for example, there's going to be a sanitary sewer trunk main crossing of Taylor Kid Boulevard. We're paying a portion of our existing infrastructure to accommodate that. Potter and Creighton streets upgrades. So there's a need to widen those streets to upgrade from a local to a collector road based on development. Our portion of it is any upgrades that are brought for make the intersection safer, or replacing infrastructure like water main or sanitary sewer, for example. So that would be a portion of that. Also oversizing of storm ponds in the Lakeside Ponds phase of development, and Odessa West is the other project included in that 1.8 million.
Thank you. Director Merritt, on that one, if I may, the Potter expansion for that, will that also involve the county and because that's an intersection with Potter and County Road 2?
Yes, absolutely. So the county is looking at changing the configuration slightly of the Potter Drive at Highway 2 close to the school. So they will have a portion of that as well. Funding. They'll be funding their portion. They fund their county portion.
Thank you.
Okay. The next project is, we recently applied for funding for Main Street, Bath, East End resurfacing. So that's part of the Connecting Link funding program. So the eligible portion of the work is about 10%. So this project is 90% funded. And we're going to take an opportunity as well to design some intersection work to improve or increase the level of service at Main Street and Windermere. And the intersection improvement work could potentially be funded under DC as well. So this project for 2021 is for the design of that work. The next project, the Layer Cake Hall. So we're proposing a budget of $233,000 for structural work. Funding application has been submitted for that one as well. So once an assessment was completed to frame the extent of the work required to stabilize the building. So it's mainly structural work that has to be done. Next slide. So we're also proposing a budget of $929,000 for the Bath Sewage Treatment Plant aeration system. So this is for new blowers and control system and better diffusers. This project is an example on how we can integrate climate action initiatives into capital projects already planned. These upgrades will be instrumental to realizing fairly significant energy savings at the facility. And the infrastructure has to be updated anyways because it's end of life. So we're taking the opportunity to include some of that climate action initiatives. The next project, $2.7 million for the reconstruction of Chesterfield, Territon, and Baker's Lane. And that includes complete water main work, spot repairs for sewer mains, sewer lateral work to reduce infiltration of storm and groundwater into our collection system. There's going to be road drainage work as well as asphalt replacement. The design of this work was budgeted in 2020 and is complete. So as soon as we get budget approval, we can tender. The next project, $1.2 million for the road reconstruction of Scotland Road and Old Wilton roads. And this includes drainage improvements, spot road-based repair, and asphalt resurfacing for the two roads. And we're also requesting a budget of $450,000 to complete environmental assessment work for future capacity expansion at the Fairfield Water Treatment Plant, the Amersview Sewage Treatment Plant, and the Bath Sewage Treatment Plant. This one is an error, sorry, on that slide. This is part of the infrastructure master plan currently in progress. Internally, we can determine how much capacity will be needed and when. This budget is to hire external consultants needed to determine sizing and review the technology and options assessed against a set of criteria to consider financial, environmental, and social aspects to determine the optimal solution. And I think that's it.
Director, is those environmental assessments, would they be covered under DC or general rate?
The environmental assessment would be covered under imposed fees.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions for the director on this section? Nobody? Okay.
Moving along, we're going to have Ms. McFarland of Community and Customer Services.
Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties there. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I will be presenting the capital budget for the Community and Customer Services Department, and I will start with Recreation Services and Facilities. The total capital budget for Recreation Services and Facilities Maintenance is budgeted for $467,400. All of these projects can be found in tab 4 on page 46, as well as detailed sheets in tab 9 on appendix C. There's just a few of them I'd like to highlight. We are proposing a budget of $25,000 for Briscoe Park swing set. In 2019, Briscoe Park in Bath was upgraded, and as part of those upgrades, the large swing set was removed as it had reached its useful life. Prior to the start of these upgrades, a public meeting was held and a specific swing set was identified as a preference for the community. This swing set, along with all the necessary underground drainage work, will be installed in 2021 as phase 2 of those upgrades. There is a budget of $140,400 for the new roof at the sections of the Odessa Municipal Office. This requirement will be added to a few roofing replacement projects that were unable to be completed in 2020. And those include the roof both at the Leisure and Activity Center, the Amersview Community Center, as well as the shingling of the Salt Dome at County Road 6. We are also proposing that the $50,000 budget for work to be completed on the Nielsen Store dock, and it includes some shoreline work as well. Currently, there are sections along the shoreline that have been restricted because of unsafe conditions, and this will be addressed, as well as damage to the dock that has occurred due to high water in 2017 and 2019. The Public Works capital budget is a little over $3 million. The first one I'd like to highlight is the staff started an aggressive surface treatment program 2 years ago, and they have been very successful in completing the roads within their plan. The plan that they have developed of prepping road previous year before the surface treatment is to be completed has really assisted with ensuring that this plan has been successful. So in keeping with this program, there's $730,000 in surface treatment and $290,000 in cross culvert replacement and prep work for the 2022 surface treatment roads to be completed. As part of our core asset management plan, there are a few bridges that have been identified as needing repair in order to attain their estimated useful life. In 2021, a comprehensive rehabilitation design will be developed for these bridges. The Emerald 40-foot will be gravel resurfaced in 2021, and the additional requested staff for Amherst Island, there will be an asset in completing this work as well, the summer contract that during the operating presentation that I requested or we budgeted for. The pedestrian crossover, as previously stated, in 2020, we had the first pedestrian crossovers installed in Amherstview, and this is proposing a higher level of crossover, and it's expected to be recommended for installation in 2021 through the consultants that we have looking at the area. Next slide. I just wanted to touch on the Township Fleet this year. There are a number of vehicles across the municipality that are identified in the 2021 budget that are due to be replaced, and that's based on condition and life cycle. And this also includes a large snowplow within Public Works, a planning vehicle and a recreation vehicle, and 2 half-ton trucks and a skid steer in Public Works. There's also a proposal to add 3 new vehicles in Public Works that are budgeted for purchase, and they are a result of growth and will be funded by development charges. And then there are 2 new vehicles that are being proposed in the budget in the utilities division, and they will be funded through impost fees.
Do I have any questions with regard to that presentation? Okay, I've got one. The vehicles in the utility slide, for the utility vehicles, were they accounted for in the utility rate study that was done the beginning of last year?
I believe so, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so they're already worked into the rate adjustments that are moving forward.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
I have a question, Mr.
Councilor
Chair.
Porter, go ahead.
Yeah, the surface treatment program. A while back, the public works manager had said that there was going to be developed you were going to develop a rating system in order to be able to prioritize which roads got what treatment. Is that what we're talking about here? Like, has that rating system been completed? And 2, is that what the surface treatment program is being used for?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the surface treatment program currently is, we are surface treating roads that are currently, we are not upgrading any gravel roads to surface treatment roads. So these are just life cycle work on these roads. They're within a certain timeline to maintain their life. We are working on a rural roads improvement strategy. These replacements are not a result of that improvement strategy at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Following on Councilor Porter's comments, do we have an estimate as to when we will see the rural road improvement strategy coming forward?
Not at this time, but we can most definitely, I believe we were aiming for the end of 2021 was what we had stated in our strategic plan. So I know COVID has impacted us a little bit. So I don't want to say, yes, we're going to make the end of 2021. But it most definitely, we are definitely working on it, Mr. Mayor. And if it's not by the end of 2021, it'll definitely be early in 2022.
Okay. So we can see that impacting our capital planning for likely 2022 and 2023. Okay.
Potentially.
Thank you. Other questions? And we just go through 12 million that quickly? And Okay, is that the end of the capital presentations then?
Yes, it is, Your Worship.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions with regard to the funding? You've just had a description of all of the projects or the highlights of the projects, and the details are in your binder, of course. At the beginning, Mr. Dickey presented on where those funds are coming from and how we'll move forward on that. Did you have any comments or questions with regard to that? Okay, and I guess we move into the utilities budget.
Okay, utilities it is. So we're going to speak to utilities. Before Ms. Merritt comes on, she will be speaking later. I'm just going to do a quick overview of the high-level financial part to start, because we are gracious in finance, and that's what we do. So the utilities budget this year, you'll see is overall 9% increase. This budget was created in line with the 2021 rates that were approved back in November by Council. And it is built within the parameters of the rate study that was approved and completed in 2019. Just to remind people, when we, for the 2021 approved rates back in November, there was no change to the fixed rates, and that was in line with the study. Water rates were increased 5%, which was actually less than the 10% per the study. And sewer rates were increased 13%, which is actually less than the 14% per study. And just to remind everyone, the reason we didn't have to quite go to the increases the study projected was due to increased consumption. So, and that was approved back in November. So this budget's all in line with that. The next is just overall capital again. As mentioned earlier, utilities has about 4.3 million in capital. You can see the splits there between water and sewer. As Ms. Merritt spoke earlier, a lot of this is managed through the engineering division. And she spoke to some of the projects there, and she'll highlight a few more in a few slides from now. This is the funding plan for capital. So about a third of it comes from in-post reserve funds when you combine the growth and club fees. Get a little bit from third-party agreements, which is mostly consists from Correctional Services Canada, and that's because they do partner on capital projects in the Bath area. So in Bath sewage or Bath water, they partner with us, and then the rest of it is from the water and sewer rates pay as you go there. So that is the funding plan for 2021. No new debt is proposed for utilities capital. This is just a 4-year capital plan for utilities. I'll just explain the chart there. That blue line there is the infrastructure gap prior to using reserve funds. So the orange bars are the capital plans each year, and the red bars would be the total funding before using reserves. So you can see in 2021, there's a bit of a gap there before using reserve funds. And as you see in 2023, the capital plan is actually forecast to be fully funded before reserves. And in 2024, that red bar is actually above the capital plan. So what would happen in that year is that's a year we actually replenish the reserves to make up for the years that we withdraw more. And that is all per the rate study. Part of the goal of that rate study was to provide an up and down of reserves to smooth it out over time. So you can see that that plan is actually working, and so that's a positive in that respect. And I think that's about it for that one. The next slide does show the debt. So this year in 2021, we have just under $1 million in debt payments. That includes about $180,000 in interest. That is down from last year. There is no new debt required, and right now we don't project that we will need debt in utilities till possibly 2026. Speaking on that prior slide with the reserves and stuff, we're projecting that we won't need to take out any new debt in utilities over the next 5 years, which as Steve, the treasurer, mentioned earlier, comes with pressures on the operating. So that's a positive scenario. And just financial planning continue, just reminding the rate study was approved in 19. We are continuing that transition to a 40-60 fixed consumption. And as I mentioned earlier, that's why that fixed rate didn't change as we continue to transition to that. And just want to highlight on page 55 of the binder in tab 5, there is a detailed variation to show you the difference between what the rate study projected versus what's actually in the budget. For the most part, it's pretty bang on. You'll see there is a decrease in expected salaries as well as debt. And that's because we haven't had to take out debt like we projected due to the deferral of some capital. And utilities has also deferred a couple of the hiring positions that were in the rate study. They pushed off to 2022. So you see that is in the budget is lower than what the study projected, but you'll see we've upped our contribution to capital over what the study projected. And then that's what allows us to push off any possible debt for another 5 years, things like that. So it is always, we are always working with it, but just to highlight that if anyone is looking for the details on the variation. And now I will turn it over to Ms. Merritt.
Thank you, Mr. Renier. I think council is very lucky that he presented the financial portion of the utilities budget. He did a much better job than I would have. Okay, so this next graph, you'll find it on page 56 of the binder. This is meant to show the water consumption in cubic meters per household. When you look at the bar graph, it's not meant to be a accumulation of that information, but it's more comparison between each community. So if you look at 2020, the average residential consumption for Odessa, for example, was 0.39 cubic meters per household, 0.40 for Bath, and 0.41 for Amherstview. So you'll notice that there's not a lot of change between 2019 and 2020. We use this information to predict revenues from water and sewer consumption billings. So less usage means less revenue. Usage is also somewhat dependent on weather patterns. So with wet years, for example, a fair amount of precipitation, wet years often correlating with less water being used on average. So when predicting potential revenue, we often take growth into account. But we have used the 2020 water consumption figures for 2021 to be more conservative, as we are unsure of the impact of the pandemic on water demands at this time with more people staying at home. And we were expecting a larger increase in use in 2020, but that has not been evident. So it's, we use this graph with caution. Next slide, please. So new operating initiatives and enhanced services for 2021. So you'll find that on page 49 and 50 of the binder. So these proposed initiatives fall under really two strategic goals. One is environmental responsibility and the other one is efficiency and effectiveness. So we're proposing to keep a fairly large operating budget for sludge removal for the Amherstview sewage treatment plant, $250,000. So in 2020, we spent over $320,000 to remove as much sludge as possible from the series of sludge storage ponds. The impact of rain over the last decade reduced the efficiency of this process as the solids concentrations of biosolids can be hauled to agricultural fields. And it's reduced to the point where we are moving mainly water at this point. We pay for this external service by the cubic meter. So when we moved, roughly 15,000 cubic meters of biosolids in 2020, it starts to add up. So we were able to accomplish what we aimed to do for 2020 to better manage the impact of rain on this process. We're aiming to completely empty the main storage cell in 2021, but it is totally depending on weather. We could be fighting the rain. Once we regain control on the volume of water in these ponds, we will be looking at a more efficient biosolids management strategy and reduce this significant operating cost to a more manageable level. We're also proposing, we're We have budgeted for the inspection of interior surface of the water towers in Bath and Odessa. We had budgeted for that in 2020, and we had to reschedule in 2021 due to shifting priorities caused by the pandemic. And we're aiming on inspecting the cathodic protection for the high pressure water main feeding the water tower in Bath, as well as the sewage force main for the west end of Bath. Cathodic protection is an important process in protecting this vital component of our underground infrastructure. And lastly, one of the key change in the operating budget is the decrease of hydro consumption at the Fairfield Water Treatment Plant. Again, this is another perfect example of what I mentioned earlier with regards to potential savings from the implementation of climate action initiatives. So a fairly simple change in the operation of the blowers at this facility realizes a saving of $8,400 in hydro charges. And this type of savings could be rolled into a reserve fund to be used to implement other energy saving initiatives if that's the direction that we're going. Next slide, please. So this slide shows you the key capital projects I'd like to highlight for 2021. As Mr. Renier mentioned before, the capital budget proposed is $4.3 million. So we're proposing $45,000 to replace the grinder at the Amerzu sewage treatment plant, and this is a life cycle project. We're also proposing a budget of $170,000 for the urgent roof replacement at the Bath water treatment plant and the Bath sewage treatment plant. This has been pre-approved at the end of 2020 and will be scheduled as soon as the replacement of the roof at the Odessa Fire Hall has been completed. So we're also proposing a budget of $75,000 to relocate the fill and drain pipes at the booster station reservoir on County Road 6 by the train track, the big blue silo. The reservoir will need to be taken out of service to complete this work. We also received pre-budget approval to complete the replacement of membrane filters at the Fairfield Water Treatment Plant. Membranes have been ordered and expected to be installed later in 2021. The project cost for this, the total cost for this project is expected to be $643,000. And the last project I'd like to highlight is we're proposing a continuation of water meter replacement program with a budget of $140,000. So this project, basically we're moving technology from a manual reading of the water meters, needing a remote, a little black box on the outside of the homes, and moving to radio frequency. We started the conversion about 2 years ago. Due to the pandemic, we were not able to proceed with many meter replacements in 2020. We typically plan on replacing around 200 meters per year. We were only able to do about 20 last year. We will tag along with water main construction projects, for example, on Chesterfield, Territon, and Baker's Lane to do some of these replacements. And the rest of them will be scheduled with the homeowners to be done later in 2021. And I believe that's the last slide for utilities.
That is it for utilities. If there's any questions.
Council, any questions on that program? And just a side question with regard to the water meter replacements. As we're seeing a lot of new construction, can I assume safely that the new technology for the meters is going into the new homes? We don't have to go back and replace those at a later date?
Yes, Your Worship, you're completely correct. All the new homes that are being installed, they get the brand new water meter, new technology.
Good. If we continue with the pace we're at, what timeline do you foresee us moving completely to the new technology?
We are budgeting for at least another 2 years beyond 2021.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I see none. Okay,
Um,
this comes back to Phil or Steve?
I believe I'm just going to provide a quick budget recap. Just to remind everyone, since this was capital and utilities tonight, so just to take everyone back to the overall general rate budget overview as a recap. So currently in the budget, it's a proposed 4% overall residential tax rate increase on the overall rate. That's about an $18.7 million departmental operating budget. As we talked tonight, 12.8 million capital budget, possibly about 6.2 million in potential debt issuance, and we're using about net withdrawals of 342. So that's just a high level recap. As we mentioned in our first presentation, the budget is a policy document. We still come throughout the year, as our CAO mentioned, staff reports, council bylaws, and then just next steps going forward. So after I get off rambling here, we can have a review discussion. Any further things the council would like, we will prepare any amendments as required, bring the recommendations back to committee of the whole, and hopefully March 8th meeting, we'll have it on there and hopefully approve budget by March 22nd. And so with that, I will open the floor to you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll go to council. Do we have any questions for the overall presentation of both operating, capital, and utilities budgets that we've now received? Seeing none, I'll start it off through to either the treasurer or the deputy treasurer. Am I understanding correctly that the current proposed tax rate increase of 4%, that is inclusive of the estimated county tax increasing at 2%? And I don't remember off the top of my head what the current estimate for the education tax going to the province is. But can you confirm that that is all inclusive?
Yes, that confirmed 4% would be an estimate with the county at 2%, and education has been confirmed as being flat. So yes,
flat this year.
Yeah, but that is the assumption to get at that 4% overall.
Okay, so that could vary based on the county's deliberations that haven't quite started yet.
That is correct, yeah.
Other members of council?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Councillor Porter.
Yeah, in the initial presentation on Tuesday night, it was indicated that a vast majority of the increase was due to an increase in, not necessarily an increase in salary and wages, but a combination of an increase in salary and wages and new salaries, new positions. Can you confirm approximately how much of that is impacted the overall rate increase?
Sorry, how much the impact is based on the new positions being proposed?
Both new and salary increases. My understanding, and I guess where I'm going with this is, my understanding is that a comment, I believe, I'm not sure who made it, it might have been Mr. Dickey, but that a good portion of the rate increase was due to salary and wages, both new positions and increases.
Yes, so the overall, the levy increase of just over 1.4 million, just under $1 million of that is attributable to salaries and benefits in general. Of that, about 600,000 is the impact, the net impact, incremental impact from new positions, and the other 350 to 400,000 is the increase in step increases, cost of living, wage increases, our benefits increase. So it's just under about $1 million of the 1.4 million levy increase would be attributable to that. That's about 60-40 between the new positions and existing positions just receiving cost of living increases and benefit rate going up.
Thank you. Councillor Porter, do you have a follow-up?
No, thank you very much for your response. I do have comments in when we decide to take comments.
Okay, I'll look for other questions first. Again, I have another one. Earlier in the presentation from Director McFarland, there was a proposal to look at the Layer Cake Hall. Actually, no, it might have been, I forget who said, but the Layer Cake Hall proposal, capital cost of $233,000. I'm wondering at this point where that number's come from and how solid we are on it and what the plans for that are.
Oh, I can answer that question through your worship. So that came out of an assessment. So we had a structural assessment done of the building, and that's the estimate for the repair.
Okay. Is it assumed that if we go ahead with this, that it can be done within this calendar year?
Well,
I can
maybe I
answer
will defer that to Lori or Director McFarland, sorry.
That project is almost 100% funded by the federal and provincial funding. There's 217,000 there to pay for the cost of that. We have not yet heard if we have that funding. When we came to council, we said we would not move ahead with that project unless we had confirmation that the funding had been approved. We've just been checking because we've not heard anything yet. And we reached out to the provincial local office today and just have not quite gotten confirmation where it sits right at this moment.
Okay, so that one is pending grant funding.
It's pending grant funding. We're ready to go. We have the design. We've been to the Heritage Committee to do the actual, to go in and do a further assessment on it as well. So we're able to do the prep work ahead of time in our money that we had set aside for heritage assessments. So we're able to get it to a point where as soon as we hear about the funding, we'll be able to send the tender out. And I believe the requirement in that funding was it had to be done by December 2021. So to answer your question, yes, it would be done in this calendar year.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Other questions across the board? Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. Excuse me, through you. And I'm to finance or I just wanted to confirm that I was understanding it correctly. There is $2.5 million in the budget this year for the design of the hub, but there's a report coming later so there won't be any actual spending done until that report comes to council and is approved. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, Deputy Mayor. So there's 2.5 in the budget, which we had to put in there to do our modeling and projections. There is a separate resolution on the report that requires a committee of the whole, and we will bring that back. And that resolution basically says that 2.5 million's in the capital budget, but none of that will be touched until we bring back a further report to get council's approval to actually start spending it. And that 2.5 million, not to speak for engineering, it's pretty much design and getting the project sort of shovel ready, I guess, to go, but we won't actually spend that until further approval is obtained. And there is a resolution to say that.
Okay. And just a follow-up question, Your Worship. Of that $2.5 million in the budget, is that fully funded by the township, or is there grant money and funds in that as well?
No, that would be fully funded through the township.
Okay, thank you.
Unless we can find other funds.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, other questions? Then I will start opening the floor to comments, which will likely generate further questions, but Council, if comments with regard to the overall budget presentation.
I have a comment.
Councillor Porter, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you very much, everyone, for the budget presentation. It was very well done. Much appreciated how it was laid out. and easy to follow and read. 4% overall tax rate increase. That's a lot for our community to absorb, and you know, it's with hesitation that I've looked at that. However, based on the question and the reply that I asked earlier about a good portion of that, I don't view it as an expense. I view it as an investment in our future. Normally, I would never support a 4% increase. I would never support anything above a consumer price index increase. However, I do know that we've done a lot within the organization as far as service delivery models, as far as reorganization, and in the hopes that with this kind of investment with the new salaries, that we will be able to attract development, attract businesses, and increase our tax base that way, so that in the future our residents don't have to have such a huge share of the tax burden. So that's how I'm viewing it, and I am supporting it because of that very fact that you know, I see it as an investment, and hopefully we can, you know, move forward with improving our reputation as a municipality open for business, and be able to attract commercial and industrial retail businesses that can share in the burden of our tax payments. So that's I guess all I have to say about that.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Other members of council wishing to make comment? Councillor Buderick, go ahead.
I too agree with Penny about this is a fantastic report put together by staff. I probably will have a few questions via email I can send through to Mr. Silver. Some things that have been brought up already from constituents, but I think they've done a great job. And the impact money, well, impact not increasing property rates definitely impacts the 4%. And I totally am on board on cost of living increase, but again, just echoing what Councillor Porter said.
Thank you. Councillor Townend, go ahead.
Yes, I'm happy to jump on the bandwagon, as it were, with Councillor Porter's comments and Councillor Buderick's. To me, when I read the budget, I mean, I agree with Councillor Porter's comments that the budget was incredibly well presented. You know, the binder is intuitive, the way that we've structured these committee of the wholes, you know, that, you know, we're not all sitting around in council chambers, obviously, for different reasons, but we're not all sitting there till 11, 12 at night, you know, all wanting to go home and not really focused on things in the latter hours. You know, everything's been laid out very clearly. And what came across for me in all of the presentations and in the binder itself is that staff are very focused on what council has directed in all of our various plans, and everything that has been suggested, including new initiatives, are all interconnected and linked to our larger goals, which is, as Councillor Porter has said, is an investment. It's looking ahead, and so, you know, for all of those various reasons, I too will be supporting the budget to go forward.
Thank you, Councillor Townend. Other members of council? Deputy, go ahead.
I have a question first, and I'll direct it to the CAO just because he was the one that made the comment at the beginning, and he may not be able to answer it off the cuff or quickly. You at the beginning of this session, you had mentioned that there were scenarios that staff were trying to come up with to see where there could be possible savings, which again would impact service and deliverables as well. I guess what I was, 4% is a lot. And I'm struggling with it. But I guess the thing is if we reduce that, I don't want to see us going into reserves more. So I guess there's kind of the if you say, if you try not to spend the money or not, raise the taxes, but you take your reserves, really you've done the same thing. You're just hurting us again in the future. So I wasn't sure if there were scenarios that were considered where the reserves stayed the same, but there were potential savings that could be looked at.
After a round of comments, I was going to be going back to the CAO for his presentation. With council's direction, would we like to hear Mr. Silver's comments now? Councillor Parks?
Hi, I just wanted to comment on a few things. I agree that the budget presentation and the binder has been extremely helpful in going through and understanding this in more detail. Every year it gets a little bit more informative for myself. The other thing that, the only thing I really kind of see on the table that could be possibly something that could be deferred might be the hub. I know we've jumped on that and wanting to move forward with that, but my concern is if COVID continues for any length of time, revenues have dropped significantly on the recreational side. So that might be the only thing that I could consider that might be an option to look at postponing for now. But other than that, I think everything else is really where we want to be going.
Thank you. Other comments before I go back to the CAO? Okay. Then I'll turn it over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so if I understood the question correctly, many of the scenarios we were looking at was deferring some of the expenditures to next year. So council would be debating those expenditures again, and if you don't spend the money this year, sometimes it's more expensive to do those projects in the following year, depending on the economy and what happens. So, there were scenarios that, yes, not as much money was going into reserves as well. But if council is of the opinion that 4% would be acceptable, our reserves are not at the levels our auditors would like to see them at. I think that if there were scenarios that we're looking at, that there were further savings, that we could then put that into, say, the fleet reserve. We would like to see that fully funded. A bit of ways away from that, we have a tax stabilization reserve to help in winters, which are opposite of this one, where you might have a lot of snow and ice, so that you're not building that into your base. So there's lots of opportunity, I think, where we can set that aside as an investment, as Councillor Porter was saying as well. So those are the scenarios that we were looking at, and many of them were putting or delaying things until 2022. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. The Deputy Treasurer, go ahead.
Yeah, just to build on the CAO's comments, since reserves seems to be a topic, I just wanted to reemphasize that coming in the beginning of March, Finance is planning on bringing a pretty thorough and fulsome reserve fund policy review and update. And a big focus of that is on tax rate stabilization and building reserves to the appropriate levels, just so council knows that in about a month and a half's time, we will be bringing that to bring that picture more into line. And part of that is really trying to set some targets that can really help us with our long-term planning. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Other comments? And I'll add mine in, and it does involve a couple small questions. I very much agree with both sides of what have been said here. The accessing the strongest asset that the township has being its staff, and improving upon our staff to work towards our strategic plan is a great investment. But it's also an investment that carries further costs into further years. As we bring on more staff, those costs are then baked into the following year's budget and the year after that, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not the same as a one-time purchase of something that can improve our efficiencies. It is an important investment, absolutely. But as has been noted, a 4% tax increase this year for our residents will be a challenging one. I mean, a lot of our residents have had very difficult years, certainly. And with that, increases above the rate of inflation are tough to handle for many people. And we need to recognize that. So finding that right balance, it will be an important feature. One of the questions I had was, I understand that we have not completed the end of year at this point. We won't complete that for a little while yet, but one of the pieces of that determination will be the year-end surplus or deficit, what our situation is there. And I know that we have had a practice in past of rolling any year-end surplus into our reserves, the rate stabilization as one area. Do we have an estimate at this point of what that deficit or surplus situation will be?
Your worship, we provided a pretty high level estimate. Ooh, when was that? Back in the summer. At this point, I would say we're projecting possibly a small surplus. Again, part of the year end is how you possibly move some things around. So part of that would be we received some money this year in potential COVID funding. So part of that would be our projections into next year. We could be impacted further if we're able to keep that in reserve to brace us for 2021. It might be worth having a smaller surplus this year instead of bringing that in to cover this year's, because we don't necessarily know if we're going to get senior level further. So there's all those kind of weighing. As of right now, though, we are projecting a small surplus, I would say. At this point, we're not expecting a deficit, if that helps.
Okay, that does help our analysis. Mr. Silver, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, as per bylaw, that if there is a surplus, it goes into the reserve for working capital automatically. So again, that's a good policy that council has adopted, and then we can draw from that if it's needed in the future.
Thank you. And while we're on that topic, and the mention of the difficulties that COVID has brought this year, the fact that we are coming in not in a deficit situation is great kudos to our staff who have managed to get us through this last year, and hopefully continue and hopefully won't have quite the same pressure this coming year. But you've done a great job. We greatly appreciate that we are coming in without a significant deficit this year. Other comments, please. One thing the CAO and I had talked about was if the budget is acceptable as is, that's one statement. But if we are looking for a target, if we are looking for a particular percentage, then that's where the scenarios that the CAO and the staff have been working on would come into play. Does anyone wish to talk about what an acceptable rate would be? I'm seeing nothing. Councillor Townend, go ahead.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion if you'll accept it, Your Worship.
And I'll go to the CAO first.
I'm not seconding the motion.
No.
But I believe the Deputy Treasurer has a slide. Is it appropriate to put that up now, Phil?
Yes, Your Worship, if you like. If we're going to go, I do have a separate slideshow that goes through each resolution that's in the report. We did this last year, if it helps council to see the wording in the individual resolutions, so we're clear on that when we bring the report eventually forward. If that is helpful, I could share my screen and bring those up at this time. But if Councillor Townend is seconded, I guess.
Councillor Townend, I think it would be appropriate to look at the individual pieces within this. Actually, while I'm thinking of it, I did want to point something out, if I may. I asked the Deputy Treasurer to dig out some information earlier today. One of the things that we are facing as a municipality is we've talked a lot about the heavy reliance on our residential taxpayer and how we are working, and part of our strategic plan and efforts every day are going into increasing the commercial and industrial activity within the municipality. But one of the other pieces there is the shift that we have seen on the reliance on the taxpayer versus the other tiers of government. So I asked Mr. Renier to pull up some numbers and show us that. And I'll ask him to speak to that now if he would.
Yeah, sure. So I don't have a thing to share on that, but in speaking with the mayor, basically the shift that's happened over the last 5 years, if you go back and if you looked at just general rate and how much revenue we need to generate to be fully funded, we've kind of transitioned from about 65-66% of that being based on our property tax levy to this year in the budget about 70% in the general rate is needed to be funded through our property tax levy. And just to provide some perspective, for example, in 2018, it was 66%. You might be thinking, oh, so now we're using an extra 4% burden, if you want to say, on the tax base. What does that really mean? Well, if you go back to 2018 and applied that 70% ratio that we have this year, that would have been about an extra $750,000 needed in property taxes back then. So you can see the impact of, and I think that's the message the mayor was driving at, I guess.
Absolutely. The slow degrading of the funding that we're getting from other levels of government and shifts that burden back to our property taxpayers. It can be said that it represents about half of that 1.4 million increase. Again, it changes every year with different programs, but it is definitely a way this is migrating, and I don't foresee it migrating or changing from that. But it's worth mentioning that not all of these extra costs are within our control. In many cases, it's a reduction in the funding that we're getting elsewhere. With that, again, Councillor Townend has offered to make a motion, but I think it would be appropriate if we go into the slideshow looking at the individual components that staff are asking us to approve.
I just shared my screen again. If everyone, am I on the right one? Everyone can see it. So I'm just going to go through. I believe there's 10 resolutions overall. So the get started. So the first resolution, this speaks to what the mayor and CAO were speaking, is any surplus from the 2020 general rate year-end operating budget be transferred to tax rate stabilization working fund and the capital program. That is a resolution we typically put in there. If everyone's happy with the wording on that. We did try to make the resolutions a little more clean and concise this year, so hopefully that helps everybody.
Council, do you wish to review each one before making decisions, and then we'll come back and do them one by one? Okay, and we'll go ahead to number 2. Thank you.
Yeah, so the second resolution is the 2021 general rate operating budget be received as follows. A township levy requirement of $18,682,000, a township residential tax rate of 0.00826587. That's the required residential rate to achieve the levy. And then it just states any fluctuation in the actual taxes levy due to changes in tax policy and/or finalized assessment calculations shall be added to or subtracted from the budget and transferred to the working fund reserve. And that's basically a catch-all if there's a rounding error, or maybe the county comes in at 1.8 or things like that. We would just put it in our working fund reserve. That's basically the catch-all statement there. Resolution 3 speaks to the service area operating budgets, and they be received as follows: $884,200 for transit, $3.290200 for Amherst Island Ferry, and a utilities budget of $10,119,200. Resolution 4 is the 2021 Amherst Transit special area tax rate remain the same as 2020, and that's at 0.000589. I don't believe we've spoken to this in the presentations, but we are now proposing to change the area rate in Amherst for transit at this time. So that resolution speaks to that. The 2021 general tax rate supported capital budget in the amount of $12,820,600. 2021 utilities capital budget to be received totaling $4,344,800. This one we could update depending on how tonight goes, if you so include and are inclined. But public notice of intention to adopt the 2021 budget be posted on the March 8th, 2021 council agenda and advertised in a local newspaper and social media. I would say we potentially could change that to possibly, if the clerk's okay with this, the February 8th council meeting, and then maybe pass the budget on the March 8th meeting. We could possibly move that up. Resolution 8, the 2021 budget as presented be referred to the March 22nd, 2021 council agenda for adoption. As I mentioned, possibly we can move that up to the 8th of March. Resolution 9. So this speaks to the deputy mayor's question earlier, that staff bring back a report to obtain direction from council on the community hub prior to spending any funds included in the 2021 capital budget for this project. And resolution 10, staff be authorized to proceed with the implementation of programs and capital projects, excluding the community hub as noted above, or I could change that to resolution 9, reflected in the 2021 budget, subject to incorporation of changes from council's review of these budgets. So those are the resolutions.
Thank you. And again, I come back to council for comment on any of these. And I will ask the question to the CAO and the clerk. The deputy treasurer just indicated that if we could proceed faster with this, is there significant benefit? What would the challenges of changing those dates be?
Your worship, if the earlier the better as far as programming goes, people could begin working on the budget, on the projects within the budget. If it's adopted earlier, that would make even a couple of weeks makes quite a difference when you're putting out tenders and requests for proposals for the larger items.
Thank you. And just for clarity, if we moved it to council adoption for public, for sharing to the public on February the 8th.
Yes.
As we don't have a meeting the 4th week of February, we would be looking at a month of available public comment prior to March the 8th.
That's correct.
For adoption.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, council. You want to do these one by one? Then I'll ask the deputy treasurer to bring the slide 1 back up. And I look for, unless there's an objection or further comment, I will look for a motion. Councillor Townend, go ahead.
Motion to adopt resolution number 1 as stated.
So moved. Do I have a seconder? And Councillor Gordon. Any questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. We go to resolution number 2. And do I have a mover for this? And I'll go with Councillor Townend again, fastest hand.
Motion to adopt resolution number 2 as stated.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Porter. Right, mover comment? Seconder comment?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments?
Question, please.
Councillor Parks, go ahead.
Just for clarification, so if we approve this resolution, that's including the 2.5 that's already budgeted or would be budgeted for the hub? That's including that as a budget line item?
Believe so. I'll look for that clarity. Yes, the CAO? Yes, it is. Right.
Yeah, yes, it is, your worship.
Thank you. Do I also understand that the 2.5 would, again, assuming the council in a future meeting approves it, would be part of the $6.2 million worth of debt that we would be looking at acquiring, and thus if council makes a different decision with regard to the hub, we simply would not acquire that debt.
That's correct.
And therefore really wouldn't change the current levy requirements.
No, it wouldn't, Your Worship.
Thank you. That was clarification I was looking for.
Okay. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to item 3. Service area budgets. Can I get a mover other than Councillor Townend?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. All right. Do I have a seconder? I'll go with Councillor Parks. All right. Any comments, Councillor Porter?
No.
Councillor Parks?
No.
Anyone else? I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. Moving to number 4. It's Amherst Transit Special Area Tax Rate set. Can I get a motion, please? Councillor Buderick, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Number 5. General tax rate supported capital budget at 12.8 million. So moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Buderick. Thank you. Comments? None. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Number 6. Utilities capital budget at 4.3. Mover.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Thank you. All right, mover comment?
No.
Seconder comment? Anyone else? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Item number 7. This sets the dates. Again, we've heard the idea that these dates may be changed. I look for a mover speaking to the date.
I'll move as amended to February 8th.
And so moved, setting that date at February the 8th by Councillor Porter, seconded by Councillor Townend. Right. Any comments?
No.
Oh, the clerk has a comment. Hang on. Right.
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship. I would suggest, just because of the notice period, with it being the end of January, by the time we would get notice out for it to go to the public, I would suggest that you would give notice still on February the 8th, have the information there, but have the public comments period to be on March 8th, with the intent that you would be that you would adopt the bylaw based on the comments received on March the 8th. So it's just, it would still give you March the 8th to pass it, so long as there wasn't a public comment in the negative on it. It allows a bit more for the public to be aware of the decision. Does that make sense?
I thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm not sure I'm understanding. My understanding of the idea of moving it to February the 8th was to give the public the month from February the 8th to March the 8th to have this as a public document and provide comment back to council.
Yes, so what you would be doing is, in a regular council, adopting the recommendations that you're proposing as the rates, but the actual bylaw would get passed on March the 8th, but I would allow the public comments to be held on March 8th as well. A public
So,
comment period.
okay, so I think I'm understanding now. So this being a committee of the whole,
Yes.
these resolutions that we're passing right now would be brought forward on February the 8th.
Yes.
Right? Therefore, the document would become a public document and subject to review and comment from February the 8th on. But we would ask for public input at a formal council meeting on March the 8th.
Yes.
And thus look to passing it on March the 8th.
Yes.
Does council understand that? Okay, and we're good with that. We have, sorry, the mover on that, I believe, was Councillor Porter.
Yes, that's correct.
So you have clarity on the posted notice of intention to adopt be posted for March the 8th. But these resolutions would come back to the February the 8th. Do you wish to amend your motion?
So on February 8th, you meant, not March 8th. Like we were going to, at the council meeting on February 8th, we're going to actually formally give the public notice of intent to adopt.
Yes.
You said March 8th, so you meant February 8th. Yes, so my motion still stands and I don't need to change my motion, correct?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure. The intention, we intend to adopt on March the 8th, if I'm understanding the will of council right now, right? So that would be posted for the March the 8th council meeting. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
Yes, so the resolutions that are in the committee of the whole will be ratified at the February 8th. And on that February 8th, we're going to have notice on there under your public notice section of the agenda to say that the budget as presented here will come forward on March the 8th. That if anybody wanted to speak to it, they can do it between February 8th basically and March the 8th, but there would be a public component on the March 8th agenda to receive any public comments. And then depending on the comments that are received, the intention would be that the bylaw will be on March 8th as well to be adopted.
Okay, so based on Councillor Porter's motion, right now reads that the public notice would be of intention to adopt the 2021 budget be posted on February the 8th.
Yes.
And so that is still a valid motion for that purpose?
Yes, the notice will be on the February 8th agenda to say that it'll be for March 8th meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got it now. I'm sorry, maybe I was being thick on that one. So Councillor Porter, yes, I believe your motion is supporting what the direction that we were being provided. Do you have anything further to add to that?
No, I don't.
Okay, I believe Councillor Townend, you were the seconder. Any comment? Anyone else? Then I will call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. And again, my apologies for, I guess, my misunderstanding the direction there. We move to resolution 8. So this one would then change to the budget 2021 budget as presented be referred to the March 8th, 2021 council agenda for adoption. I'm seeing nods from the clerk and I see a motion from the deputy mayor. So moved. And the seconder is Councillor Parks. Thank you. Any comment? We'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to 9. This is with regard to bringing the community hub back to a future meeting and that no funds will be expended until such time. Councillor Buderick, so moved. Councillor Parks, seconds. Right. Any comments? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Porter, you appear to be frozen. I didn't hear anything.
Aye.
Thank you. And the 10th resolution then. Oh, sorry. I call it carried. And 10th is staff be authorized to proceed with the implementation of the programs and capital projects, excluding the community hub, reflected in the 2021 budget, subject to incorporation of changes of council's review of these budgets. Motion, please. Councillor Townend, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. At which point, I believe we come back to the agenda. Okay. Is there anything else that we need to bring to this budget deliberation? Seeing nothing, I will again, once again, add my comments to what has already been said by my peers on council. This budget presentation was very, very well prepared, easy to read. We know that we've already received some comments from the public indicating that they've appreciated that as well. So again, I know this takes a bunch of work, right? But I greatly appreciate the efforts put in by specifically the team in the Treasury Department, but by all the managers and directors that had input to this, and specifically, of course, led by our CAO. Good work in doing all of this. So thank you very much. There's nothing else on the agenda. Oh, the clerk.
Sorry, Your Worship. Just we had another committee of the whole scheduled for February the 1st for budget. Is it the intent to cancel that meeting?
And does anyone on council wish to go to another committee of the whole for this budget, or are we satisfied at this time? And then the direction would be that we don't need that meeting. I believe that was marked as tentative anyway. Thank you. Anything else? Then I look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor Townend. Right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion is carried. We are adjourned. I thank you very much, everyone. Good job
night,
working through the
everyone.
budget, and have a great evening.